Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Toby Talks. I'm Toby Hoy, and today we're going to dive into one of those conversations that makes even the most confident professionals break out into a cold sweat. We're talking about asking for a promotion. Now, before you skip this episode thinking that it doesn't apply to you, stick with me for a moment. Whether you are early in your career, mid level, and feeling stuck, or a senior leader considering your next move, the principles that we're going to cover today apply to everyone. Because here's the thing, asking for what you deserve is a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. I've had this conversation more times than I can count, both as somebody seeking for their next promotion and as a leader on the receiving end. I've seen people absolutely nail it, and I've seen people absolutely bomb the conversation. And I want to help you be in the first category. So grab your coffee, grab your blueberry and banana smoothie, settle in, and let's talk about how to actually get that promotion that you've been thinking about. Before we dive into tactics, we need to talk about mindset for a second because I meet so many talented people who are just waiting. They're sitting around and waiting to be noticed, waiting for someone to tap them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you've been doing great work. Here's a promotion." And look, that does happen sometimes, but it's rare. More often than not, the people who advance are the ones who advocate for themselves, not in an obnoxious way, but in a strategic, professional way. Personally, I learned this lesson the hard way. Early on in my career, I was doing everything right. I was coming in early, staying late, taking on extra projects, basically doing the work of two people. And I genuinely thought that somebody would just notice and reward that. Spoiler alert, they didn't. It was not until I finally worked up the courage to actually ask for a promotion that things changed. And even then, my first attempt was pretty rough. I remember sitting in my boss Rita's office, stammering through why I thought I deserved it, and basically hoping that she would just say yes so that I could escape the awkwardness. But you know what? That awkward conversation started a process. It got the wheels turning, and eventually I got that promotion. More importantly, I learned how to have that conversation better the next time. So if you are someone who thinks that you should not have to ask, that good work just speaks for itself, I hear you. In an ideal world, maybe that would be true, but we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where your boss has 17 different things on their mind at any given moment. And unless you bring your career progression to their attention, it might just keep sliding down that priority list. All right, so let's get into the meat of this. And we're starting with timing because honestly, this might be the single most important factor in whether your promotion conversation succeeds or fails. You can have the best case in the world and deliver incredible results. But if you ask at the wrong time, you are just setting yourself up for disappointment. So, when is the right time? Well, it's when you have momentum. Think about it for a second. When have you recently just knocked something out of the park, or completed a major project, or exceeded your targets, or solved a problem that was keeping everyone else up at night? That is when your value is front and center in everyone's mind. I had a colleague once who waited until right after she had led a massive product launch that came in both ahead of schedule and under budget. The entire company was celebrating. And that is when she scheduled the conversation with her boss. That was a smart move. Evidence of her capabilities was discussed in nearly every meeting company wide for weeks. But Personal timing is only half of the equation. You also need to consider the organization's timing. Is the company doing well financially? Are they expanding? If so, then that's good. If they are in the middle of layoffs or a hiring freeze, then that is not ideal. I made this mistake once. I had prepared a whole presentation about why I deserved a promotion. I mean, I had spreadsheets and charts and graphs and metrics, everything laid out beautifully. The problem, I scheduled it for the same week that our department got told to cut 15% from the budget. My boss actually kind of laughed out loud a little bit when I brought it up. Not a mean-spirited laugh or because I was wrong, but because the timing was so spectacularly bad. So, what are some green lights that you should watch out for? Performance review season is a big one. The machinery is already in motion. People are already thinking about compensation and advancement. That right there is your prime window. Another green light is when your manager has recently been promoted or recognized in a positive way. When your boss is riding high, they have more political capital to spend on advocating for you. They're in a position of strength, and that helps you as well. Company expansion is another one. The roles are already being created, and there is more budget flexibility. The whole organization is in growth mode, which is exactly when you want to make your move. Now, what about red flags? Financial turbulence is the obvious one. If there are hiring freezes or budget cuts or talk of layoffs, everyone is simply in survival mode. This is not the time. Major organizational changes are another red flag. During restructuring, nobody even knows who reports to whom, let alone who's getting promoted or a salary bump. And there is one thing people often overlook. If your boss is completely swamped or obviously stressed, that is not the time. They're barely keeping their head above water, and they simply do not have the mental bandwidth to fight for your promotion right now. One more thing on timing. If you are new to your role or have been in it for less than a year, you probably need to pump the brakes a little bit. Build more of a track record first. Now, there are exceptions, but generally, you need to demonstrate sustained performance before making the ask. Okay, so you have identified the right moment. Now comes the part where most people stumble, actually making the case for why you deserve a promotion. The biggest mistake that I see is people focusing on what they want instead of what they've done. Saying things like, well, I've been here for 3 years is not a compelling argument. Neither is, well, I need the money or I work really hard. Your employer does not care about tenure. They care about value. They do not care about your mortgage payment. They care about results. I know that sounds harsh, but it's reality. So you need evidence. And I mean specific, measurable accomplishments that made a real difference to the organization. So here's what I recommend. Keep a running document through the year of your wins. Don't wait until you are ready to ask for a promotion to start thinking about what you have accomplished. Document it as you go. So, what does good documentation look like? Let me give you some examples. A bad example is, well, I improved the customer experience. Okay, great. But how? By how much? Says who? Versus a good example of, I led the redesign of the customer onboarding process, reducing drop off rates by 23% and saving the company approximately $180,000 annually in churn. Do you see the difference between the two of those? The second one has specifics, it has numbers, and it has a business impact. So here's another one. Well, I am a team player and I help people. Good for you. Do you want a cookie? Versus a good example of, I mentored 3 junior team members who all received positive performance reviews, and one of whom who was promoted to a mid-level analyst. Again, the second example was specific, it was measurable, and it had actual outcomes. Now, here's the part that separates good cases from great cases. You need to connect your accomplishments to the company's goals. If your organization has been laser focused on customer retention, highlight how you moved that particular needle. If efficiency has been the priority, show how you've streamlined processes. When I was building the case for my last promotion, I spent time really trying to understand what kept my boss up at night. What were the departmental priorities? What were the metrics that the executives cared about? And then I made sure that my case spoke directly to those things. It was not about listing everything that I had done. It was about highlighting the things that mattered most to the business. You also need to paint a picture of what comes next. A promotion is not just a reward for past performance. It's an investment in future value. What are you going to do in that new role that you can't do in your current one? How will the company benefit from giving you more responsibility instead of less? This is often where people get uncomfortable because it feels a little like bragging. But listen, if you are simply stating facts about what you have accomplished, that isn't bragging. That is advocating for yourself and your future. There is a big difference between the two. Here's a little trick that helped me. Pretend that you're advocating for someone else. If your best friend had the same track record as you, what would you tell their boss about why they deserve a promotion? Write that down. That right there, that's your case. All right. So you have picked your moment, you have built your case, and now you actually have to have the conversation. And this is where people's palms get sweaty. So, first things first, schedule a proper meeting. Don't just ambush your boss in the hallway or drop this into a regular one on one when you have a spare 10 minutes left at the end. This deserves dedicated time. Give your manager a heads up about what you want to discuss. Something like, "Hi, Sarah, I would like to schedule some time to discuss my career growth and the possibility of me taking on a more senior role. Would you have 30 minutes next week?" That does two things. It gives them time to prepare, and it signals that you are taking this seriously. You're not making a casual request. This is a professional conversation about your career. Now, when you get into the actual meeting, they frame this as a dialogue, not a demand. You're not walking in there saying, "Promote me," or "I'm leaving." That might work in the movies or on TV, but in real life, it usually backfires. So here's the framework that I have found to work reasonably well in the past. Start by expressing your commitment to the organization. Make it clear that you are interested and that you see a future there. Something along the lines of, "I really value being part of this team and I want to continue to grow here." Then present your case. Walk through your key accomplishments and the value that you have added. This is where all that documentation pays dividends. But be specific, but concise. You don't need to go through every single thing that you've ever done. Just hit the highlights and then make your ask. Be direct about what you want. Something along the lines of, "Based on the impact that I have been making and the additional responsibilities I've taken on, I believe that I'm ready for a promotion to insert job title here." And here's the crucial part. Ask for their perspective. Something along the lines of, "I would love to hear your thoughts on this," or, "and understand what you think a path forward might look like." That last part is what turns this from a monologue into a conversation. It shows that you're not just waiting for a yes or no, that you actually want to understand their perspective and work together on a plan forward. Now, let me tell you what will probably happen next. Unless you work for some unicorn type company that has an unlimited promotional budget, your manager is probably not just going to say, "Hey, great, you're promoted effective immediately." More likely, It will go something like this: let me think about this and get back to you. Or, here's what would need to happen for that to be possible. And honestly, that conversation, that response is good news. It means that they're taking you seriously, that they're thinking through the logistics, the budget, and the timing. What you want to avoid is the flat out no with no path forward. If your boss sets conditions such as, well, you would need to lead a major project first, or we would need to see consistent performance for another quarter, don't get defensive. That is valuable information. Ask clarifying questions about those conditions. Things like, well, what does success look like? What are the specific metrics or milestones that we need to meet? Get concrete so that you know exactly what you're working toward. You want to walk out of that conversation with a clear roadmap, not just some vague promises. So here's another place where a lot of people just drop the ball. They have the conversation, it goes reasonably well, and then nothing. They wait and wait and wait some more. Meanwhile, their manager has moved on to 47 other pressing issues, and that promotion conversation just gets buried under everything else on their desk. So, to prevent that, you have to follow up, but you have to do it in a professional, persistent way without being annoying. There's an art to this. Right after your initial conversation, send a thank you email summarizing what you discussed. That serves two purposes. One, it shows professionalism. And two, it creates a written record of what was discussed and what the results were. Your email might say something like, thanks for taking the time to discuss my career progression today. I appreciate your perspective and on the additional leadership experience that I would need before moving into a senior role. As we discussed, I will focus on leading the third quarter product launch and building out the mentorship program. And I would like to check in on my progress in about 6 weeks. Does that timeline work for you? You see what happened there? You recap the conversation and you confirmed the action items and suggested a follow up timeline. Now you have permission to circle back in 6 weeks without it feeling random or feeling like you're being pushy. When that 6 week mark hits, send a brief update, something along the lines of, hi, Sarah, I just wanted to touch base as we discussed. The third quarter product launch is on track to deliver next month, and I've officially started the mentorship program with 2 team members. Would you have time next week to discuss the next steps? That keeps the conversation alive without making it feel like you're pestering them. You're providing updates on the things that they said mattered. It's a natural check in. So, what if months and months go by and nothing happens? What if you hit all the milestones that they set and you still don't get a clear answer? First step is to have another, frankly, candid conversation, not aggressive, but direct. Something along the lines of, I want to be clear about about where things stand. I've accomplished the goals that we outlined, and I'm wondering what else is needed for the promotion to move forward. Can we create a specific timeline? If the response is still vague or you keep getting kicked down the road, you have some tough decisions to make. Maybe the company generally doesn't have room for advancement right now. Maybe your manager doesn't have as much influence as you initially thought. Maybe, and this one's a hard one to hear, maybe they're just stringing you along and hoping that you'll forget about it. Whatever the reason, you need to know when to call it. I'm not saying quit the second you don't get a promotion, but if you've been doing everything right, building your case, hitting your targets, following up professionally, and you're still getting nowhere after 6 months or a year, that is data. It might be time to test the market and see what your skills are worth elsewhere. And honestly, sometimes that's the wake up call that a company needs. I've seen this happen. Someone starts interviewing, gets an offer at a higher level, and suddenly the current employer finds the budget for that promotion that they said was impossible. I'm not saying that you should use that as a negotiation tactic, but it is worth knowing that if you're not being valued where you are, somebody else just might. So let's talk about what happens when you hear no, not yet, or not a, well, let me think about it, just a flat out no. That stings, especially if you put a lot of work into building your case and you thought you had a pretty strong shot. I've been there. It's disappointing and it can feel like a personal rejection. But how you handle this rejection says a lot about your professionalism. And it can actually set you up for success down the road. First things first, don't burn bridges. I've seen people get a no and then immediately become bitter. They check out and they start bad mouthing the company. That guarantees that you will never get promoted there and it tanks your reputation. Instead, take a breath. Thank your manager for considering it. I know that feels counterintuitive, but just stick with me. Then ask for specific feedback on what would need to change for the answer to differ in the future. Something along the lines of, I understand the decision, but can you help me understand what gaps I need to close to be ready for insert job title here? Listen to what they say without getting defensive. Even if you disagree with their assessment, this is valuable information about how you are being perceived in the world. You might think that you're absolutely killing it at strategic thinking. But if your boss says that you need to work on it, then that is their reality. And their reality is what matters for your career progression there, not your reality. Then you need to make a decision. Are you willing to work on those gaps and try again in 6 months? Or does this tell you something about the culture or your future at that particular company? Sometimes a no is the push that you needed to realize that you may have outgrown your current role or the team or the organization as a whole. And that's okay. Some of my best career moves came right after being told no somewhere else because getting rejected forced me to really evaluate whether I was in the right place. And a couple of times I realized I wasn't. I was staying out of comfort or fear, not because it was the best place for my career. So a no can be a gift, even though it doesn't feel like it in the moment. All right, we are getting close to the end, and I want to leave you with what I think is the real secret to getting promoted. Are you ready? If so, here it is. Start acting like you are already in the next role. I don't mean faking it or overstepping your boundaries. I mean generally developing the skills, taking on the responsibilities, and demonstrating the judgment that the higher or more senior role requires. If you want to be a manager, start mentoring people now. If you want to be a director, start thinking strategically about the entire department, not just the part that you play. When you do this, the promotion conversation becomes less about convincing someone that you can handle the job and more about formalizing what you are already doing. The title and the pay bump become a recognition of reality rather than a leap of faith. This approach also gives you incredible leverage. If your current company doesn't promote you, somebody else will probably hire you into that role. I've seen this happen dozens of times. Someone in a junior level role is doing senior level work and gets passed over for a promotion and then gets recruited away at that senior level because other companies can see what they're capable of. So even if that promotion doesn't happen where you are, the work you put in to grow into that next level is never wasted. Now, look, asking for a promotion is uncomfortable. It forces you to advocate for yourself, handle personal rejection, and navigate company politics. Nobody likes doing it. But the alternative is just waiting around from now until the end of forever, hoping that someone notices your hard work and just spontaneously decides to give you more money or responsibility. And yeah, that might happen, but I wouldn't bet the bank on it. So do the work. Pick your moment, build your case with real evidence, have the conversation professionally, follow up without being annoying. And if it doesn't work out, take what you learned and figure out your next move. Your career is not something that happens to you. It's something that you build one uncomfortable conversation at a time. So, if any of this helped you think through your own promotion strategy, do me a favor and share it with someone else who might need to hear it. We're all trying to figure this out together. So, that's it for this time. Thanks for listening to Toby Talks. Until next week, keep growing, keep learning, and remember that nobody is going to hand you your career. You have got to build it yourself. Take care, everyone.